I'm here in South Square in the Gray's Inn, the legal heart of London. And the building behind me is where Charles Dickens lived, and also where some of his characters lived. Gray's Inn was one of the four inns of court for the training of barristers, in other words, real lawyers. All of these buildings were reconstructed after the Blitz destroyed them, except, fortunately, this one, number 1, where Charles Dickens worked as a solicitor's clerk in the offices of Ellis and Blackmore from 1827 to 1828. In many of his novels, Dickens poked fun at the lawyers, judges, and barristers, as they were not always solicitous, fair, or just. In Pickwick Papers, Samuel Pickwick's industrious lawyer, Mr. Perker, has chambers here that were reached by, quote, 2 pairs of steep and dirty stairs, unquote. Sam Weller, Samuel's faithful servant, jokes that no London laundress would go near Gray's Inn since they had a natural aversion to cleaning anything dirty. In The Uncommercial Traveler, published in 1860, Dickens described Gray's Inn as the most depressing institution in brick and mortar known to the children of men. He quotes, "Can anything be more dreary than its arid, square Sahara desert of the law, with the ugly old tile-topped tenements, the dirty windows, the bills to let, the doorposts inscribed like gravestones?" Yet this square seemed good enough for David Copperfield's dear friend Tommy Traddles. Here is where Traddles chose to live with his family as he climbed the legal ladder of success. Staple Inn, one of the 10 inns of Chancery where lawyers were trained, was said by many to be the quietest place in London, off of one of the noisiest streets, High Holborn. Author Nathaniel Hawthorne said it was the quietest place in London, and Dickens agreed. In Dickens's unfinished novel, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, the narrator says that walking into Staple Inn courtyard was like suddenly having cotton stuck in your ears. In that novel, Staple Inn becomes the place of refuge for many of the main characters. It is here where Edwin Drood dines with the barrister Mr. Grewgious, who suspects that Edwin is not in love with the woman he intends to marry, but gives to him her dead mother's ring nevertheless in trust. It is here that that same woman, Rosa Budd, flees from Edwin's murderer, John Jasper, who is madly in love with her. It is here where the prime suspect, Neville Landless, hides with his twin sister. And it is here where squeaky clean sailor Tartar lives, and whom I believe Rosa loves and probably ends up marrying. Of course, we'll never know, as Dickens died in 1870, leaving the plot up to the reader. But my favorite scene from Edwin Drood is from the dining scene, in which the flying waiter runs back and forth across Holborn Street here, bringing food and silverware from the hotel over there at Furnival's Inn, which I will show you next. On this site behind me once stood Furnival's Inn. Furnival's Inn was another address of Charles Dickens. He once stayed there. But more importantly, it was one of the 10 courts of Chancery. Now, Chancery were not real lawyers. They were more like solicitors. They handled marriage cases, divorce cases, those kinds of things. So this used to be Furnival's Inn, one of the courts of Chancery. Furnival's Inn was demolished in 1897, 27 years after Dickens' death. Dickens lived here from 1834 to 1837, where he wrote Sketches by Boz and his first novel, The Pickwick Papers. In Dickens' novel Martin Chuzzlewit, John Westlock, who later marries Tom Pinch's sister Ruth, lives in Furnival's Inn. The naive but faithful Tom Pinch lives with John, who had warned him about the cruelty of his master, Seth Pecksniff. Tom finally believes him when Pecksniff fires Tom after falsely accusing him of making advances toward Mary Graham, whom Pecksniff designs to marry in order to gain her inheritance from Martin Chuzzlewit Sr. Martin's grandson, Martin, ends up marrying Mary, another happy Dickens ending. One of Dickens' most sympathetic characters, the young and eager Pip, arrives in London for the first time and immediately concludes that London is overrated, mainly because of where he has to stay, here at Barnard's Inn. In Great Expectations, Pip describes Barnard's Inn as a very dark and dirty place. Miss Havisham's lawyer, Mr. Jaggers, puts him up here to live with Herbert Pocket, the son of Miss Havisham's cousin. Since everyone seems to be somehow connected to Miss Havisham, both Pip and Herbert draw the same mistaken conclusion that she is Pip's benefactor and that she has plans for him to marry Estella, his true love. The dismal and dreary nature of the inn is symbolic of the corrupting influences soon to take hold of Pip, which will drive him into debt. It is here where Herbert gives Pip the nickname Handel, after the composer whose piece, The Harmonious Blacksmith, Pip enjoys listening to. And it is here where Herbert tries to teach Pip the manners of London, which is indicative of the hypocrisy of the morally bankrupt nature of the legal system of Victoria England's Inns of Chancery. Apparently, Barnard's Inn was not up to Pip's expectations. Get it? Great Expectations?